Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lucy and in today's video I'm telling you guys how I read the most books I've ever read last year. So in 2022 I managed to read 60 books. Now I know this doesn't compare to the incredible booktubers who manage to read hundreds of books plus a year, but I'm a normal person. I do not have superpowers like that, and genuinely it takes me a while to read a book, and if I'm just feeling not into it or life starts to take over, I will sometimes struggle to read 4 books a month. That is a book a week, and sometimes in the past I've really struggled. There have been some years where I was less active on YouTube and I didn't even read 25 books a year, which for me as a booktuber and someone who works in publishing is quite shameful. But there is no pressure when it comes to the amount you read in a year, but if you genuinely want to learn how to read more, then this video is for you. So first off, let me just say that having a goal really helps. So if you know that you want to read a certain amount of books in a year, then set yourself a challenge. I use just Goodreads for this. You can set a yearly challenge where you can aim to read a certain amount of books in a year. So last year I set my goal to 60 books. That is well over a book a week, and genuinely it was a little bit of a stressful time towards the end of the year when I tried to finish it off. But I hope these tips will inspire you to just ace your reading this year. And if you are looking for ways to get more reading into your day-to-day life, then I think you will pick up a lot of helpful tips in this video. So first off, get yourself a warm beverage. I've got a pumpkin spice latte, which in the middle of January, I know it's a bit weird, but genuinely I can drink these all year round. So let's just get started with the video because I want to share all of my tips with you. So as I said in the intro, last year I read 60 books, which is the most books I've read whilst being on BookTube. And this is quite a big achievement for me because in no way has my life gotten less busy. In fact, last year was probably the busiest work-wise I have ever been. And also in terms of like socializing, we were not in a lockdown last year. We weren't in a pandemic, which was a great thing, but it also meant that more social plans were happening. So I managed to read 60 books with very little time available, or like less time that was actually available to me. And this is how I did it. So tip number 1 is all about the formats of what you're reading. So my number 1 tip is to switch your formats up. So when I know that I've got a lot of books on my TBR that I want to read, and I'm like, oh, I just see this tower of physical books, in no way is that going to be beneficial to my brain when I'm like, I really want to read more, because I just see this tower, this towering TBR of all the books that I need to read. So instead, I mix up the formats of those books. So say one read of mine will be a physical book. I always make sure that the next book I switch to a Kindle book or an audiobook. And that way you're mixing up the formats, it feels fresh, it feels different. If I'm struggling with a physical book and I'm like, I'm just not getting into this, I don't really know why, if it's a reasonable price on Kindle or a reasonable price on audio, I will switch mid-book. And guys, this is a life changer when you're just not feeling like reading, because maybe you're just not feeling like sitting down with a physical book. Maybe you just need to put your headphones in and listen to an audiobook whilst you're doing other things. And yes, that is still reading. So that would be my first tip, is if you're struggling to kind of sit down and read, switch up your formats. It will definitely help you. Okay, so I know I said that the first tip was like the biggest tip, but this tip is life-changing. So if you read from a TBR and you're finding that quite challenging, you've got a prescriptive list of books that you set yourself to read. I struggle a lot with that, where I just get in a funk and I'm just like not interested in the books that I'm reading. So this is a big life-changing tip, I'm telling you this. This will help you read more books. Read the genres you actually want to read. Mind-blowing. But hear me out before you switch off this video. I knew for the longest time last year that even though I was reading a lot of fantasy, a lot of very like complex fantasy and quite dry fantasy, if I'm being honest, in the back of my mind I was like, why is there no romance in this book? Where's the romance plot? I want steamy, escapist romance, and I'm not getting that from this fantasy book. Straight after finishing that book, I basically binge read romance for the rest of the year. And genuinely, I have managed to read so many books in quick succession because I was reading what I actually was craving and what I actually wanted to read. So if you are a slave to your TBR, try mood reading and mix it up. Just read what you want to read. All that matters is that you are getting the books read. You know, you are reading and you're getting your way through books on your TBR that you actually are interested in reading. So if you are feeling like you're slogging through a book that's in a genre that you're not keen on at the minute, just switch it up and read the genre that you actually want to read, and you will 100% read a lot faster and a lot more books. So this was a really helpful tip in terms of finishing off my challenge at the end of the year and hitting my goal. Read a lot of shorter books towards the end of the year. But last year I read a lot of really chunky fantasy, a lot of chunky books at the beginning of the year. And what I found this did was get those, you know, big books out of the way first. And then I got to prioritize my shorter books towards the end of the year. And it's that feeling where like you're ticking off a task. Your brain likes the reward. Your brain likes to tick things off, quick, get them done. So when you are reading a lot of shorter books, you feel more productive. You feel more like into reading. And that's why I'd really recommend looking how many short books you have on your TBR. You know, I managed to filter on my Goodreads my TBR, and then I filtered it in terms of word length or page length, and oh my god, was this revolutionary, because I just basically chose a handful of short books towards the end of last year and I read those. And I will leave the reading vlog where I do that, but honestly, life-changing. Read the short books towards the end of the year, that way you know you're going to hit your goal. And yes, a novella still counts as a book in my opinion, so if you've got like a long series that you're reading, or your favorite author has written a novella, that's a great tip to pick up. Like, look for some novellas that you can kind of just digest quickly, read quickly, and that's another book closer to your goal. So another favorite thing of mine to do, and this is something that really helps me get in the mood to read, and it is cozy reading afternoons or cozy reading sprint, whatever you're fancying. I think romanticizing reading is the key to really getting a lot of books read. So last year when I was feeling not in the mood to read, and I was like, I've been reading the same book for 3 weeks and I'm really tired of that book, you know? And I was like, I really want to just get this book done, but I'm not looking forward to reading it. What I would do is create a cozy reading afternoon where I would put on a kind of soundscape on the TV, you know, I'd make it very cozy in there, I'd put blankets on, I'd get my favorite cup of coffee, I would get snacks in. Usually I would also film a vlog, because if you're a booktuber and you're lacking motivation, film some content of you reading that book and that will force you to read the book. But having a cozy day of reading really does help you romanticize the act of reading and helps you get more pages read. Another kind of extension of that is reading in the bath. For me, gets a lot of pages read, because it's almost like multitasking, where I know I'm not going to be on my phone in the bath, so I can literally spend like an hour and a half until the water gets cold just reading, and that is an hour and a half of reading that I normally wouldn't have gotten done. Another handy tip, if you're always on the go, if you're quite busy, if you work a job, if you are at school, if you have a long commute, bring your Kindle or bring a book, whatever it is, whatever you read on, bring it everywhere with you. So I tend to read my Kindle when I'm commuting to work. And also, as a side tip, I have the Kindle app on my phone, and it is honestly so good, because whenever I'm on the packed tube and I can't reach into my bag, yes, that is the reality of commuting in London, I can just look on my phone and I can just click the book I'm reading on my Kindle and it all syncs up so beautifully. So have the Kindle app on your phone, on your iPad, whatever device you use when you're on the go, but also bring a physical book, a physical Kindle with you, or your audiobook. And make sure whenever you are like just commuting, whenever you're doing a long drive, don't waste those hours of getting somewhere. Read whilst you're doing that. And I know that's probably not revolutionary, I'm sure all of you guys do this. I'm talking to you, my fellow readers, after all, but change up the way you're doing that. So yes, read on your phone, on your Kindle app. You know, if you're in a queue somewhere, like anything. Use your time effectively, and it really does help. And I think my final tip, which will be a controversial one if you're really a prescriptive TBR follower, the biggest thing that really helped me in 2022 in terms of finishing books was to let go of your monthly TBR. So for years, I've always been a TBR follower. I love creating TBRs and just planning out my reading. I am a planner by nature, but actually, I found it more of a hindrance last year in terms of being productive and getting more books read. Because as I said, going back to my other point about being a mood reader and reading the genres that you want to read, when you have a TBR in front of you, and at one point you might have thought you wanted to read all these books, in reality, if you're feeling different at the time, then it can be hard to follow a TBR. So this year, I am kind of loosely creating TBRs. I'm not creating monthly TBRs, I'm creating kind of more seasonal TBRs to aim for, rather than like a prescriptive TBR that I have to follow. I find having a couple of books that you want to read per season, and then just letting yourself choose what you want to in that moment outside of those books is a really helpful tool to get more books read. So guys, those are my main tips on how I managed to read the most books I ever read last year. Let me know your tips down below in the comments. I would love to know how you guys managed to read the amount of books that you do, and I really hope this video was helpful in some way. If you are struggling with your reading, or last year you didn't read as many books as you wanted to read, that's fine. Like, it's not a competition, but I do understand the need to just read all the books, because most of these are in fact unread and they're calling me out, let's just say that. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Again, I hope it was helpful. If you did enjoy it, why not subscribe to my channel, as well as follow me on social media. I am at BookBellReads on Instagram, Twitter and TikTok. And I'll see you very soon in my next video. Bye.